because I have something worth living for.
$25 billion, 8 films. A generation that grew up inside a single story, carrying the books to school, memorizing the spells, finding something of themselves in those pages. Then, in June 2020, a tweet cracked it open. Not a lawsuit, not a box office collapse, a tweet. And the people who had given that world its face publicly turned against the woman who built it. The question that followed wasn't personal, it was corporate. When the creator and the franchise go to war over identity, who actually controls the legacy? To understand the trap Warner Brothers now finds itself in, you have to go back to where the break started. June 2020, J.K. Rowling posts a series of tweets responding to an article that used the phrase, "people who menstruate." Her response, "I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Wombin? Woombin? Woomud?" The backlash is immediate. Within days, she publishes a 3,600-word essay on her website. In it, she defends the concept of biological sex, raises concerns about gender self-identification, and draws on her own history as a domestic abuse survivor to explain her position on single-sex spaces. She frames it as feminism. Critics frame it as transphobia. The line between those two readings does not close. Daniel Radcliffe responds within days, not on social media, through the Trevor Project, an organization he has supported financially and publicly since 2009. His statement is direct. Transgender women are women. He goes further, acknowledging that Rowling's work gave him his career, that he is deeply grateful for it, and that none of that changes his position. He does not retract. He has not retracted since. Emma Watson follows. Rupert Grint follows. The cast that embodied Rowling's world for a decade publicly distances itself from her worldview. The people who were Harry, Hermione, and Ron are now, in the most visible way possible, telling the audience that they do not share their creator's views on gender identity. For a segment of the fan base, this is clarifying. For another, it is devastating. A generation that found identity and belonging inside those books, many of them queer, many of them trans, now watches the author reject part of that community while the actors stand on the other side of the argument. And the controversy does not stop in 2020. Rowling escalates. In 2024, she states publicly that there are no trans kids and that no child is born in the wrong body. In April 2025, following a UK Supreme Court ruling that defined woman by biological sex under the Equality Act, she posts a photograph of herself with a cigar, labeling it TERF, Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist, VE Day. In December 2025, she publicly supports Girl Guiding's decision to ban trans girls from its programs. This is not a one-time controversy. It is a sustained, escalating ideological campaign, and it is happening in real time, while Warner Brothers is trying to launch the most expensive Harry Potter production since the original films. The cultural war is visible. What is less visible is what it means for the machine built around these books. Warner Brothers Discovery is carrying approximately $35 billion in debt. That number matters because it removes options. When a studio is that leveraged, a franchise like Harry Potter is not just an asset, it is a financial lifeline. Warner Brothers Discovery, WBD, leadership has designated it a crown jewel. The home box office, HBO, Max reboot, covering all 7 books across a planned decade-long run, is not a passion project. It is a debt strategy. Now consider Rowling's contractual position inside that strategy. She holds copyright over all 7 novels. Through her production company, Bronte Film and TV, she is executive producer on the HBO series. And critically, she negotiated moral rights protections directly into the deal. In the United States, copyright law does not automatically protect an author's creative vision after adaptation rights are sold. Once the rights transfer, the studio controls the work. Rowling understood that. She contracted around it. HBO chairman Casey Bloys has publicly confirmed that her involvement is, in his words, fairly involved. The studio cannot sideline her without triggering contractual consequences. That is not speculation. It is the architecture of the deal. To understand how unusual that position is, consider the alternatives. Orson Welles lost the Magnificent Ambersons to Radio Keith Orpheum, RKO, who recut the film while he was overseas and destroyed the original negative. Peter Jackson spent years in litigation with New Line Cinema over Lord of the Rings accounting before he ever saw a profit share. Buchwald versus Paramount exposed how studios could absorb a massive commercial hit and legally claim it generated no net profit. In each case, the studio held the paper. Rowling holds the paper. Hogwarts Legacy illustrates exactly how durable that position is under pressure. Before the game's February 2023 release, boycott videos on TikTok accumulated 3 billion views. The game still became one of the best-selling titles of the year. The noise was real. The commercial damage was not. If you want to understand how the studio system was built to handle exactly this kind of pressure, this channel covers the legal and financial mechanics behind Hollywood's biggest power struggles. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. But the HBO series is a different kind of exposure. More than 400 actors, writers, and activists, including Papa Essietu, cast as Snape in the reboot, signed an open letter urging the UK entertainment industry to take action against Rowling over her statements. A cast member in the new series is publicly aligned against its executive producer. Warner Brothers cannot remove Rowling, cannot ignore the cast, and cannot neutralize either position without cost. The studio is structurally locked between two irreconcilable forces, and the crown jewel is sitting directly in the middle. The production moves forward regardless. Filming on Season 1 is underway. Season 2 has already been green-lit before a single episode has aired, an unusual commitment that signals how much WBD needs this to work. Hasbro has signed on as the primary toy partner. The commercial infrastructure is fully committed. The machine is running. But the machine is inheriting the schism. John Lithgow, an American, is cast as Dumbledore. Breaking the all-UK casting tradition, the original films treated as a near-sacred rule. Papa Essiedu, a Black British actor publicly aligned against the series' own executive producer, is cast as Snape. The new series hasn't aired a frame, and it's already carrying the weight of two separate cultural arguments simultaneously. Authenticity on one side, ideology on the other, and Rowling's name sits over all of it. The corporate restructuring adds urgency to every one of those arguments. WBD's planned Q3 2026 separation into two independent companies, streaming and studios on one side, Discovery Global on the other, means the entity that retains Harry Potter needs it to perform. The streaming and studios company targets at least $3 billion in annual adjusted EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization from its studio operations. Harry Potter is not one piece of that target, it is the center of it. That is why Netflix's reported interest in acquiring WBD at an enterprise value of around $82.7 billion matters so much. Any acquirer buying WBD is buying a franchise that comes with a contractual structure they cannot modify. Rowling's moral rights protections and creative approval clauses travel with the intellectual property, the IP. No amount of corporate restructuring, no new ownership, no subscriber growth target changes what is written into the deal. The paper moves with the asset. This is the precedent the industry should be watching. When a creator retains moral rights and approval clauses at this scale, studio debt doesn't override it. Cast rebellion doesn't override it. Cultural backlash doesn't override it. Radcliffe, Watson, and Grint have the platform. They have the public goodwill of an entire generation. What they don't have is the contract. Rowling has the contract. The Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, SAG-AFTRA. Evolving protections show that talent can use collective voice as leverage. But leverage requires structural power to be binding. Without the paper, dissent remains symbolic. Meaningful, perhaps. Binding, no. The reboot will air, the merchandise will sell, the theme parks will stay open. And somewhere inside all of that, the ideological argument will keep running, unresolved, uncontained, and structurally impossible to remove. The books taught a generation to fight injustice. Now the people who embody that lesson are fighting the woman who wrote it, inside a system designed to protect the asset, not the argument. If you want to understand how Hollywood's studio system was built to operate exactly this way, that story is next. Subscribe so you don't miss it.